Thanks very much for inviting me to join your conference. This is I think the third time I've presented here now, and it's always great. There's always a great group of companies, and it's always very professionally run. So thanks for letting me join today. Okay, so let me get started. Summa Silver. It's a very new exploration and development focused company with high grade silver and gold properties in New Mexico and Nevada. We started the company about 2 years ago. Since then, have really put out some very strong drill results. And this year, our goal is to deliver 2 maiden resource estimates on both our projects, probably towards the end of Q4. Our focus really is historic and very high grade, very prolific, famous even, past producing high grade silver districts in the southwestern United States. The first project that we acquired in 2020 when we were getting the company started was the eastern half of the historic Tonopah district. And then the second project that we acquired about 6 or 8 months after that was the historic Mogollon mining district, which is the largest historic silver district in New Mexico. And really what we're focusing on this year is getting to the resource estimates, but it's basically a story of drill, where this year our goal is to drill about 75 holes into zones of proven and known high-grade mineralization. So we can really just continue to shore up, and we can really just build ounces one hole at a time. I'll quickly introduce myself and the team. Myself, Galen, I'm a geologist going back about 15 years. I founded the company and really spent 2 years looking for something that I could really get behind and spend my time and, of course, invest my own money to turn into a winner for all our shareholders. So that's myself. Chris York is a geologist that joined us about a year ago from a major in Nevada with some great success at companies like Klondex. Christopher Leslie is senior geo. He's one of the guys that discovered the Blackwater gold deposit here in British Columbia. That's 8.2 million ounces, I think, in the proven probable categories for gold right now. And not to mention everyone on the list here, but just to summarize, the team is a group of, say, mid-career professional geologists that have had some really good success and are very hungry for more. Okay, the capital structure is the very important next slide. Recent share price is more like 112 as of right now. And this morning, I'm very happy to report that we just closed a financing for $11.5 million Canadian. At 90 cents. And that was led by Eric Sprott, and for a first-time investor for us, First Majestic Silver, which of course is a very well-known and large major silver producer, decided to take an equity stake in our company because they like the projects. So we've got here numbers that are 63.7 million fully diluted. That's actually more like 75 million as of today. And then for the fully diluted number, we're actually more like 89 million fully diluted. As far as the shareholders, Eric Sprott owns about between 18 and 19% as of this morning. But we've also got some great institutional support with a lot of long-focused resource funds being shareholders. And then, of course, management, insiders, and close associates also own a very significant portion of the company as well. The last thing I like to just point out on this slide is that we've got some research coverage on us for the first time as of about 6 months ago. So Research Capital Corporation has a buy on us with a price target of $2.50. Okay, so here's just a table of some comps. Our company, Summa Silver, has been a really interesting drilling and discovery story for the last couple of years. But now it's time for us to really take that next level, take that next step, and push towards resources this year. So I like to look at, say, okay, well, we've got typical intersection grades of about 400 to 700 grams per ton silver equivalent. Sometimes it's much higher. Sometimes it's up to 10,000 grams per ton silver equivalent. Sometimes it's less. So just ballparking it here, about 400 to 700 grams per ton silver equivalent. Well, if we look at this chart on the top here, we've got these green dots represent grade, so we're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of between these two green bars. And then if we look at the comps and we relate that back to say a market cap per ounces, we're looking at an average for the comps of companies that are a little more advanced than us of somewhere in the neighborhood of $5 per ounce. But I think where we're going to come in is, hey, you look at a company like Gold&Silver or maybe Silver Tiger, or maybe Dolly Varden, somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 to $3 to $4. I think it would compare quite nicely for a company like ours. And hey, we don't know how many ounces that we're going to have in the ground just yet. But if you take our market cap, our recent market cap of 64 million, and you start thinking about, okay, well, how many tens of millions of ounces are we going to have at the end of this year? I think there's a really significant fair case to say that, we're significantly undervalued relative to our peers. And that's because, high grades that like we have really command premium valuations in the market today. I've been talking about resources a lot already, mineral resources, but of course, getting a resource isn't a finish line. It's really only a starting line. So one of the other examples that I like to use as an aspirational goal for us is a company that's called Silvercrest Metals. They put out their first resource back a few years ago in 2018 and had a market cap at that time of about $154 million, which was about $250 per ounce in the ground and a share price of $240. Well, over the next year and a half, they really accelerated their exploration, put out another resource, put out a very strong PEA. And by the time they got to that PEA, their market cap had expanded to $383 million. They had a $4.62 share price. And you can see right here that they're really only just getting started. So, this is the type of swing that we're trying to take with Summa Silver. Okay, so I'm just going to switch gears now and talk about the properties. The first property is in New Mexico, called the Mogollon property. And it's a little bit difficult to pronounce, but it's named after one of the old Spanish governors going back to the 1600s or something like that. So this was the largest historic silver producer in New Mexico, produced something like 16.4 million ounces of silver and 340,000 ounces of gold between the 1880s and 1942. And production only shut down here in 1942 because that's when the U.S. went into World War II. So that's when all silver and gold mining stopped in the U.S. by law. Since then, it's kind of flown under the radar, got forgotten about a little bit. But in my opinion, in my professional opinion, I think this really has the chance to be one of the last great remaining vein fields in the United States. And I'll show you why I think that. Okay, so this is just an overview of the property. It's about 5 kilometers by 5 kilometers. All of the red lines are the veins. And then this green square is just the first area that we're drilling. So the next slide here, we're going to switch and look at an underground side view, an underground long section of this green square. So here we go. Here it is. The first area we're drilling has a strike length of about 500 meters. Down here and about 300 meters vertically. But I tell you, the first area that we're drilling that 500 meters, I mean, there's 34 kilometers of strike on the property. So it's really only about 1.5% of the prospective ground on the property. But nonetheless, there was 9 holes drilled in this area, right around this historic mine, 9 holes drilled there in the 1980s. That averaged 12 meters of 506 grams per ton silver equivalent. We can't use those holes in a quote unquote modern resource estimate that's 43101 compliant. But what we can use them as are really the perfect roadmap for us to step up and start drilling right away. So what that's going to take to get us towards resources somewhere in the neighborhood of 25,000 meters and 50 holes. And we've begun doing that at the end of last year. The first hole intersected a vein that was about 50 meters wide, which is really, one of the widest vein intersections that I've ever seen, maybe if not the widest. And I don't expect it to be completely mineralized with high grade, but we put out all the core photos that are on our website, and there's obvious zones of high grade mineralization, and that's just the first hole. Since then, we've drilled 5 or 6 more. And then just mobilized a second rig to the property last week. So there's 2 rigs turning here now. Okay, so next slide. But of course, like I was saying, that's just really the first target. One of the other things that we did last summer was we didn't really have any surface information for the rest of the veins on the property, you know, the other 33 kilometers of vein on the property. So what we did is we had a group of geologists crawl all over these hills, you know, very diligently, and sample all of the veins they could. And of course, they got some very strong results, you know, anywhere from, hey, you know, over 5,000 grams per ton silver equivalent in rocks that were dump rocks. So rocks that already had come out of the mines, the old mines. You know, but then, you know, moving past that in outcrop, you know, we've still got grades that are 2,000 grams per ton silver equivalent, 400 grams per ton silver equivalent. I don't need to read them all, but, you know, 1,500 grams per ton silver equivalent, et cetera, et cetera. And the great thing is that, you know, none of these have been drilled. It's actually quite astounding. Some of them have had small scale mining on them. Some of them have had significant mining on them. But for the vast majority of these, you know, these targets have not been drilled. So what are we doing for the rest of the year? It's like I've already said, you know, our model this year is licensed to drill. We're going to have two rigs turning, hopefully soon 3 on this project, as we really push towards mineral resources here at the end of the year. And the real neat thing about for us this year is that, hey, you know, we've got 50 holes planned on this property into a vein where the historic average was 12 meters of 506 grams per ton silver equivalent. You know, we're going to put 50 holes into a vein that produced that 30 years ago. So that means that I think we have a really good chance of sharing some very interesting drill results all year long. Okay, so, you know, that's the property that we're drilling now, but our first property was called the Hughes property. This one's located in central Nevada. It's halfway between Reno and Las Vegas. And it's called the Hughes property because actually Howard Hughes used to own the property back in the 70s. So that's just a tip of the cap to the history of the project. But this is one that is another real famous past producing mining district. This one was the second largest silver producer in Nevada. We have the eastern half of the old district. It's called the Tonopah Mining District. And this was the first one we drilled. So this one is, you know, it's every time that you go into these old districts and no one's ever looked at them in decades and decades, which is what happened here, you always find that, you know, there's targets, there's juice left to squeeze, you know, but how much is left? So we've spent the last year and a half drilling this and trying to get our hands around that and figuring it out. And I've had some really interesting results, you know, just a headline here, 4,408 grams per ton silver equivalent over 2.8 meters, 3,760 grams per ton silver equivalent over 2.5 meters. And then the last one highlight that we're listing here is 1,699 grams per ton silver equivalent over 4.3 meters. You know, that's all good. You know, I can sit here and throw numbers at everyone, you know, for quite a while, but you know, big picture, what does it mean? And really what that is that, you know, over a strike length of 3.5 kilometers, we've intersected multiple zones over 1,000 grams per ton silver equivalent that all remain open to expansion with interesting untested areas between them. This is just briefly a map of the property, excuse me, and then we're just going to zoom into this area on the next slide. So here we go. And like I was saying, 4 targets over 3.5 kilometers. The 2 targets on the left are focusing in on the old part of the district, you know, where we're chasing unmined extensions, number 1, and then parallel zones, number 2. So that's where we've had the most success. The 2 targets on the right are exploration flavored targets. Hey, where we're looking for the next 100 million ounces of silver in this district on an extension that hasn't really been looked at before. And I've had some interesting success here in the Ruby discovery that I'm going to get to on the next slide. So here's hole SUM 2110. It is a 1.3 kilometer step out from the historic part of the district. We drilled this in just the later part of last year. It hit 6 zones of mineralization. Yeah, mostly a little bit low grade, but the best one was 2 meters of 522 grams per ton with a half meter kicker of almost 1,600 grams per ton. But some of the best hydrothermal alteration that I've seen, and this is just an underground view here where we've got some great geophysical targets right beside it that just aren't tested. And, you know, this is directly along strike from one of the best historically producing silver districts in the United States. And we've got untested targets just like this. So what are we doing here? You know, this year, again, it's lots of drilling to do this year, where we've got about 25 holes planned, again, into zones of known high grade that are really going to get us towards that inferred resource spacing that we're shooting for this year. So if you combine, you know, this project with 25 holes with the New Mexico project that we're currently drilling with 50 holes, when I use the cliche license to drill, I really mean it. This year for us is about proving ounces. So with that, you know, that's it for the presentation, and thank you everyone for your time, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Galen. Here, there's a few questions here. The first one coming from Keely. He said, this is just a macro market, asking what you think of the silver will perform this year or long term.
Yeah, that's a good one. So, you know, I don't need to tell anyone, I think, in this conference about inflation and why during times of inflation it's good to own precious metals. And, you know, if you look at silver compared to gold, and I'm not saying, hey, own silver or over gold, I own both. You know, oftentimes, the majority of times, silver outperforms gold in bull markets. So that's one thing that everybody knows. But the emerging story with silver is that it's a real ESG metal nowadays. It's becoming one in that, hey, there's a little bit of silver that goes into every EV. There's a little bit of silver that goes into every solar panel. And when we're going to try to mass produce EVs, we're going to try to mass produce silver. We're going to try to mass produce solar panels, excuse me. If you want to get to those projections, all of a sudden you need to double, you know, silver production globally, you know, if we want to make those changes in the timelines that our politicians are saying are going to happen. We produce something like 900 million ounces of silver every year globally. We need to double that if we want to really get to these, you know, these green economy goals.
Interesting. This question coming from Sahib here. Next, he says, how much capital have you raised since the beginning of the company?
Oh, total, we've raised $34 million. And now just this fourth round that we closed this morning of 11.5, starting at anywhere between 25 cents and $1.
Okay, and last one coming from Ming He. He's just in conceptually more, I would say, a broader question asking you, since your listing 2 years ago, how do you feel Summa Silver been progressing until now? What's your thoughts on that one?
As quickly as possible. You know, you know, I've been through this discovery cycle before, and we want to be as aggressive as possible, because I think in markets, or any markets, you know, speed to getting your story out and speed to the next level are key, really key to keep investors interested, and really key to growing your valuation.
Great. Again, thank you for being here with us again to share your update, Galen.
Yeah, thanks for having me again, Gilbert. Thanks everyone for your time.
Always a pleasure. So I'll let you go. Thank you.
Bye-bye.